Hey guys, welcome back to Mo's Game Table. Today we're going to take a look inside Indian Ocean region, South China Sea, Volume 2. This is a game designed by John Gorkowski and published by Compass Games. Compass has done a twofer here with the reprint of South China Sea and the first time publishing of Indian Ocean region both at the same time, and they're shipping out together. Indian Ocean region is the newest, so we're going to take a look at that first. So let's take a look at the back of the box and see what this game's all about. Although advertised as purely commercial ventures, China's String of Pearls, a series of key ports across the Indian Ocean region, gives her the option to assert sea control of that theater, and for good reason. About 80% of the PRC's oil transits the IOR before bottlenecking at the Strait of Malacca, and then going on to terminate at ports in the PRC. Even a Gwadar-Kashgar oil pipeline, designed to bypass the full-length IOR route, would still require some initial sea transport, followed by a vulnerable offload, and couldn't carry the full load anyway. To explore strategic options around the String of Pearls, this game enables participants to play out possible future conflicts circa 2025 in the IOR from their political beginnings to military endings, with the same game mechanics as used in the South China Sea game. Players assume the roles of nations or groups of nations and deal cards in multiple rounds of play, each representing 3 to 7 weeks, to advance their separate agendas. Each card play might trigger armed conflict. If violence comes to pass, the timescale compresses to 3 to 7 hours per turn, and players deploy their military units to resolve matters by force. Those forces include individual capital ships, pairs or triples of smaller vessels, squadrons of aircraft, and battalions of ground troops, all waging war at the far end of logistical shoestrings. And you can see an example of the map, the counters, and contents. We get 3 counter sheets, 3 22 by 28 inch map sheets, 41 political cards, a rule and scenario book, 2 player aid cards, and 2 dice. The complexity is rated as medium to high. Game scale is 1 turn equals 3 to 7 hours. Map scale is 45 nautical miles per hex. Unit scale, we have aircraft squadrons, pairs of ships, subs, number of players 2 to 3, and it is a high suitability for solitaire, and average playing time is 2 to 4 hours depending on the scenario. So let's take a look inside and see what you get. All right, we got our deck of cards, 2d6, full color rulebook, 2 player aid cards, our counters, which are in shrink because these are the new thick counters, they'll fall out otherwise, and our maps. So let's set up the maps and take a closer look at the game. And here's a look at the map that comes with the game. You're going to take all 3 map segments and you're going to butt them up to one another. You're going to create a landscape style map that is 28 inches high and a little over 67 inches wide. Now I don't have the focal length on my camera here to show the entire map in one shot, which we'll do by pulling over the left and right segments of the map. You get a closer look at them. But I wanted you to get an idea of the overall scope of the map itself. The map area covers Ethiopia, Djibouti, Yemen, and Saudi Arabia on the far left, all the way through to Oman, Iran, Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Myanmar, and Thailand on the far right. And the land segments are just really beautifully done, and I love the ocean. It's not just your standard flat blue. We've got different shades of blue. We also have subsurface features, the mountains and everything that are underneath the ocean, so it gives that sense of depth, and the littoral areas are lighter shades of blue. So really love the look of the map. And we'll take a closer look now at both the right and left sides of the map. And here is a look at the far eastern side of the map. We have Sri Lanka, the rest of India, Bangladesh, Myanmar, Thailand, and Sumatra. The main body of water here is going to be the Bay of Bengal. And on the western edge of the map, we have multiple countries here, as we said: Ethiopia, Somalia, Djibouti, Yemen, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Qatar. You also have Persian Gulf, Gulf of Aden, and the Red Sea. Those are the bodies of water on the left side of the map. We have multiple tracks here too, because this is where you're going to keep track of all the steps for the game itself. The Victory Point track, your Diego Garcia transit track, the turn track, the map key, so you know all the different terrain features on the map. And then for the Chinese and the Indo-Am forces, you're going to have multiple combined arms boxes as well as task force boxes. Now we'll take a look at the player aid that comes with the game. On the front, you get the default order, the land attack cruise missile max range, your air-sea engagement sequence, your military turn sequence of play, illumination radius in hexes, and then the move category in the bottom right. And on the back, we have a breakdown of how to read the counters in the game. You have your naval units, which are surface and subsurface, aircraft, and then ground units. Next, we'll take a look at the political cards that come with the game. There is a deck of 41 of them, and at the beginning, each faction will be dealt a hand of 6. These cards will be used to do some political posturing, some maneuvering to move the victory point track up and even sometimes down. And then once war is triggered, you will then move the victory point track accordingly based on losses. And the victory point track, the higher it goes, the more it favors China, and then the lower it goes, the more it favors the Indo-Am victory. And then you have in between the symmetric Gulf states, symmetric Bay states, and the asymmetric states victories in between 5 and 15. And a key thing to bear in mind with these cards is that not every faction can play each of these cards. For example, basing, it says here, only the symmetric Bay states or symmetric Gulf states can play this card. Others may trade or discard to pass. For the high-level visit, only China or Indo-Am can play this card. Others may trade or discard to pass. And beneath that, you're going to get the instructions as to what you're going to do with this card. For basing, it says the playing faction invites the global power faction of its choice to immediately place up to 3 units in any of its coastal hexes. And for the high-level visit, the playing faction conducts a cabinet level or higher visit to a nation in the region. And at the bottom, you're going to get the outcome of the action, which is moving the victory point track in your favor. Remember, Indo-Am wants to be at 0 to 5. China wants to be 15 to 20. The symmetric states are going to be in that middle segment. So if it's in China's favor, you're going to bring it down. For the symmetric states, if it's in Indo-Am's, you're going to bring it up closer to yours. And for the high-level visit, this is kind of neat because this is an action that you're carrying out. You're conducting a cabinet level or higher visit to the nation. You have to succeed in that mission, and you do so by rolling a 3 or greater, and then you can move the victory point track in your favor. For the terrorist act, the playing faction directs a specific act of terrorism. This will increase the victory point track 2 spaces, and then you will roll for armed conflict. A terrorist act can easily trigger open hostilities. And then you have the colleague card that if you play that, immediately kicks off open hostilities. So there's a couple of ways that after you've maneuvered with these political cards, you can immediately, at your discretion, kick off a war if you'd like to, or try to kick off a war based on how you've maneuvered politically. But I think that really creates an interesting aspect of the game, just the maneuvering part, before you even get into the fighting. And next, we'll take a look at the counter sheets that come with the game. These are the new, thick, really well-cut counters that Compass is putting out with all their games. And I'm leaving them on the table because otherwise these will fall out. They fall out in strips, and you can easily separate them by hand, or you can cut them if you want to make sure you have 0 nibs at all on the side, but they do punch very, very clean. At the top, we have a mix of US, UK, and Australian forces, along with some Omani forces. The Myanmar forces here in purple, Iran here in brown and green, and then the light green and orange are Indian forces, and at the bottom right, we have the Bangladesh forces. And on the next sheet, we have US forces and Chinese forces, as well as a mix of Sri Lankan, UAE, Somalian, Yemeni, and Pakistani forces on the bottom left. And on the final counter sheet, we have the balance of forces from the various nations, as well as an assortment of administrative counters for use during the game. Now we'll take a look at the rules. This is a 34-page full-color rulebook. The inside of the front cover, we have the table of contents, and then we have the game conventions. And this will explain to you the region that you're playing in, as well as the different factions and their agendas. And then we get to the map, how to read the map, the different types of terrain features on that as well. Then we have the Diego Garcia transit track and the victory point track. Remember, we were talking about that with the political cards. The Indo-Am victories from 0 to 5, the China victories from 15 to 20. The minor states have a 3-point victory margin. For the symmetric Gulf states, it's 6 to 8, 9 to 11 for the symmetric Bay states, and then the asymmetric states are from 12 to 14. So narrow margins of victory there for the smaller states. Then we get to control, the game components, political turns, where you're going to be playing those cards that we've talked about, a breakdown of the cards, and then we get to the military turn context. The top right, you also see a breakdown of the color coding for each of the nations, and then a breakdown of the abbreviations for each of the naval units and ground units in the game. For example, you have CG for guided missile cruiser, LCS for littoral combat ship, so on and so forth, and then a breakdown of the different counters in the game, which we also have on the player aid card. The steps, consolidation, a breakdown of the units stacking for air and ground and naval units, air basing, naval ports, all of that is explained to you here. Then you have situational awareness, illumination, evasion, and hiding. Then we have strikes and how those are handled with strike dice roll example and then a breakdown here. Strike tables, mid-air refueling, and then you get to air movement phase, sea movement phase, intervention, evading intervention, and then we have an example of the evasion dice roll. Then transport, naval mines, land attack, cruise missile strikes, your air and sea combat phase, the life cycle of an air-sea engagement, anti-air strikes in stealth order, the torpedo strikes, anti-ship strikes, anti-submarine strikes, gun strikes, torpedo, anti-ground strikes, ground movement phase, the ground combat phase, and then the administrative phase. And then you have your special operations forces and how those are used. And that goes to page 21, and those are the rules. Then you get to the example of play, an illustrated example of play here on page 22, which is really detailed for several pages. Breaks down all the different aspects of the game with illustrated images to help you. And then scenarios start on page 28 with some general notes. And then scenario 1 is choke point. Scenario 2 is Jolly Roger. Scenario 3, convoy battle. Scenario 4, clash of civilizations. Scenario 5, Bengal Bash. Scenario 6, Battle of Lakshadweep. And then scenario 7, which is spillover, and that is the end of the rule book. And on the back, we have the strike table as well as a breakdown, again, of the color coding for all of the units in the game. And that is a look at everything you get inside of Indian Ocean Region, South China Sea, Volume 2. This is a game designed by John Gorkowski and published by Compass Games. South China Sea was very popular, so popular that Compass is now doing a reprint, which coincides here with the release of Volume 2. The thing that's really cool about it is you get that political maneuvering part, and then you can try to launch a war if you can, if you feel it's in your best interest to do so. What's really neat here is, and I didn't mention this earlier, this is a 2 or 3 player game. Generally with 3 players, you're going to have the third player playing those symmetric and asymmetric states. Now remember I said that they have a narrow margin of victory, but really they have a wider margin of victory than the Indo-Am and the Chinese player does, because if you're playing that third player, those minor states, you have a 9-point victory margin. So it's a little bit more of a broader area for you. So I think that brings those minor countries in more in line to Indo-Am, the coalition there, as well as the Chinese forces, making for a pretty interesting conflict when you get on the table. So looking forward to checking that out for that. And then the other thing that's really cool is it's kind of a sandboxy feel, and people have added other things to South China Sea, and I'm expecting to see the same here for the Indian Ocean region. And with the changes in how things are going in the world, you've got a lot of things that you can do. You can create your own scenarios from to reflect what we're seeing in the modern world now going forward, because this is set in like 2025, and it's just positing different things that can happen in the future. So I think this game has a lot of legs on it that can really open things up for people to design their own scenarios and to try out different things in the regions that these games cover. But once again, another top-notch quality production from Compass. They just keep knocking it out of the park, doing a fantastic job with these games. These counters are awesome. You just have to be very careful when you take them out of the shrink. Keep them on the table, cut that shrink off and slide them out, because if you pick them up or you're holding them up when you try to rip the shrink off, they're going to fall out of the tree, and you don't want to have them all over the floor. So just be mindful of that, keep them on the table, and save yourself some headache when it comes to keeping them organized when you're trying to match up the different units. But they will come out in strips, and they just pull them apart, and very easy to punch, and they won't have a lot of dog ears on them either. If you want to make sure of that, though, you can always cut them off. They're generally only attached by one by the time you get them out, which is really fantastic. So I hope that helps you guys out if you've been curious about this one. If you have any comments or questions, post them down below. Thanks for tuning in, guys. See you next time.